In the cold fragrance pavilion by the lake, the golden osmanthus was in full bloom. Delicate petals carpeted the ground, and the fragrance was so intense it was almost bitter. I sat on the stone bench, looking at my eldest sister, Jiang Wanrou. Today, she wore a water blue moonbeam skirt that made her appear even more elegant and refined, like a white lotus untouched by dust. Holding an exquisite gold-woven begonia sachet in her hand, she was looking at me with a smile. Second sister. Although this tea-white ruchuan you're wearing today is elegant, it is ultimately a bit too plain. The poetry gathering at the residence of the Minister of Justice will be crowded with distinguished guests. We must not lose face. As Jiang Wanrou spoke, she affectionately took my hand and tied a begonia pattern sachet to my waist. I embroidered this myself last night. It's filled with calming herbs. Wear it so you won't feel restless when it comes time to compose your poems. I looked down at the sachet, my fingertips brushing over the fine, intricate stitching, a cold sneer forming in my heart. In my previous life, I was just as submissive, letting her tie the sachet to my waist. An hour later, a maid accidentally spilled scalding tea on me. As I rose in a panic, the sachet at my waist came loose, and a personal jade pendant belonging to Liang Zhengxuan, engraved with the private seal of the Liang manor, tumbled out and shattered into pieces in front of everyone. In that instant, I became a shameless woman who engaged in illicit trysts. To suppress the scandal, my father arranged my betrothal to Liang Zhengxuan overnight. Meanwhile, Jiang Wanrou, who was originally the one betrothed to the Liang family, became the innocent victim and the magnanimous elder sister, eventually climbing her way up to even higher nobility shortly after. It wasn't until the moment Liang Zhengxuan pushed me off the high building that I realized Jiang Wanrou had personally stuffed that jade pendant into the sachet. By then, the Liang family had already fallen into ruin. Against my tea-white clothes, they seem rather out of place. As I spoke, I smiled and casually untied the sachet. In the brief moment that Jiang Wanrou was taken aback, my fingers moved with lightning speed, pinching and pushing at the bottom of the pouch. I had studied medicine under my maternal grandfather since childhood, and my fingers were far more nimble than those of an ordinary person. In the blink of an eye, I had felt the hard jade pendant. At the moment I handed the sachet back to her, using my wide sleeves as cover, I surreptitiously slipped the jade into my own cuff and hung the emptied sachet back onto her waist. Second sister, what are you doing? Jiang Wanrou's brow furrowed slightly, a flash of panic crossing her eyes. She clearly hadn't expected that I, who had always been submissive, would refuse her today. This is a gesture of kindness from your elder sister. I appreciate your kindness. Elder sister, I interrupted her, reaching out to straighten my lapel, my tone gentle yet firm. It's just that I'm feeling a bit lightheaded today and truly have no heart for dressing up. If you feel I am lacking in decorum, I shall go and take my leave of the lady of the court of state ceremonies now and return home to rest. That won't do. Jiang Wanrou hurriedly grabbed me. Today's trap had already been set. Liang Zhengxuan and those noble ladies she usually associated with were already waiting by the winding stream nearby. How could she allow me to leave now? As we were speaking, a flurry of noisy footsteps came from the end of the corridor. I turned my head to look and saw Liang Zhengxuan, dressed in a crabshell blue brocade robe, walking toward us while chatting and laughing with several sons of noble families. He was handsome enough, but his narrow, upturned eyes flickered with uncertainty, betraying a sense of gloom and calculation. Upon seeing us, Liang Zhengxuan's gaze lingered on Jiang Wanrou for a moment before sweeping over me with a look of revulsion. Well now, eldest Miss Jiang, second Miss, you are here enjoying the osmanthus as well. Liang Zhengxuan stepped into the pavilion and gave a perfunctory bow, though his gaze drifted, seemingly inadvertently, toward my waist. He was looking for that sachet. Jiang Wanrou discreetly signaled the maid behind her with a look. Carrying a tray of freshly brewed, scalding tea, the maid approached me with a nervous expression. My mind was clear as day. I shifted my body slightly to the side, pressing closer to the stone table. Ah! The maid let out a startled cry as her foot slipped, sending the entire tray of scalding tea splashing directly toward me. Under normal circumstances, I would have been hit dead, but this time, I was prepared. The moment the maid tilted, I pivoted on my heel, nimbly dodging behind Jiang Wanrou. As I did, I reached out and gave her back a heavy shove disguised as a supportive gesture. Ah! The tea didn't touch me at all. Instead, it splashed entirely over Jiang Wanrou's expensive, water blue moonbeam silk skirt. The bone-chilling, searing pain caused Jiang Wanrou to cry out in agony. She struggled instinctively and violently, causing the begonia pattern sachet hanging from her waist to snap under the force and fall onto the stone path with a sharp thud. Hearing the commotion, the surrounding noble sons and daughters of prominent families gathered around one after another. Seeing this, Liang Zhengxuan hurriedly stepped forward and bent down to pick up the sachet, shouting with an air of high-minded concern. "Second Miss Jiang. How could you be so careless as to drop such a private item?" However, the moment he picked up the begonia sachet and squeezed it in his hand, his entire body suddenly froze. The sachet was light. Inside, there was nothing but the faint scent of herbs. "Master Liang, what are you looking for?" I stood to the side, brushing non-existent dust off my sleeves as I watched him coldly. This is impossible." Liang Zhengxuan's expression shifted slightly, and he instinctively looked toward Jiang Wanrou. Jiang Wanrou, her face pale with pain, was also stunned by the sight. Ignoring the tea stains on her clothes, she said hurriedly, "Second sister, how did the sachet you were wearing today end up with me? Where is the one you had on you? You must be joking." "Elder sister, that begonia sachet was embroidered by your own hands. I simply felt the color didn't suit me just now and returned it to you. Everyone here in the pavilion saw it. If you don't believe me, you are more than welcome to ask the maids who were serving us." My voice was calm, devoid of any warmth. The onlookers exchanged uneasy glances. The two young maids who had been serving outside the pavilion collapsed to their knees in terror, nodding their heads in trembling affirmation. "Since the sachet belongs to the eldest Miss Jiang, young Master Liang's urgency just now makes it seem as if he knew exactly what was hidden inside." A light chuckle drifted from the crowd, the tone laced with mockery. Liang Zhengxuan's face instantly turned the color of pig's liver. He gritted his teeth and snapped. "I merely saw something fall and picked it up for Miss Jiang out of courtesy. What could possibly be inside?" "Is that so?" I smiled faintly, slowly pulling an object from my sleeve and spreading it out in my palm. The emerald green jade reflected a cold light under the sun, clearly engraved with the character Jing in a bold, flowing script. "Young Master Liang's personal jade pendant. I wonder why it would end up in my elder sister's embroidery basket. When my sister gave me the sachet today, this item was hidden inside." I looked at Jiang Wanrou, my gaze as sharp as a blade. "Sister, why would young Master Liang's personal belonging be in your keeping? And why would you go so far as to use a sachet to plant it on me?" As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings instantly fell into a dead silence. Jiang Wanrou's face turned pale in an instant. Her lips trembled, and she could not utter a single word. She never imagined in her wildest dreams that the trap she had so meticulously laid would ultimately fall upon her own head. "Second sister, you are slandering me." Jiang Wanrou stared fixedly at me, a trace of terror finally surfacing deep within her eyes. "Slander," I sneered, holding the jade pendant high. "This jade is a family heirloom of the Liang household. Who in the capital does not know this? Eldest sister, it is one thing for you to associate with young Master Liang in secret and exchange private tokens of affection. But today, you intended to use my sachet to bring this jade to light. Did you want me to shoulder the blame for your loss of chastity? Or did you intend to force the Liang family to marry a disgraced concubine-born sister like me, all to fulfill your dream of marrying into a higher status?" My words were like daggers to the heart, tearing their veil of decency to shreds. Liang Zhengxuan clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white, the veins on his forehead bulging. He glared at me with a look that suggested he wanted to swallow me alive. But he didn't dare, for seated upon the high terrace atop the rockery was a powerful figure he dared not provoke. I looked up slightly, my gaze passing through the dense foliage to meet a pair of eyes as deep as a frigid pool. The youngest high official of the great Zhou dynasty, the Duke of Zhen, Wei Wuyuan. He held a cup of tea in his hand, looking down at the farce from his vantage point, a faint, enigmatic smile playing at the corners of his lips. Meeting my gaze, he raised an eyebrow slightly, a flicker of intense interest flashing in his eyes. I withdrew my gaze and, facing the deathly pale Jiang Wanrou and Liang Zhengxuan, spoke word by word, my voice echoing throughout the Lingxiang pavilion. Young Master Liang, since you and my elder sister are truly in love, I, Jiang Wanning, will never interfere in this marriage. I have no desire to take a husband, much less marry you, with the lady of the Minister of the Court of Judicial Review and all our colleagues here as witnesses today. I, Jiang Wanning, and you, Liang Zhengxuan, shall never meet again, not in this life, nor in any life to come. Following the scene at the Lingxiang Pavilion, the poetry gathering at the residence of the Minister of the Court of Judicial Review ended on a sour note. Upon returning to the Jiang residence, my father was so enraged that he smashed his favorite Junware brush washer in the study. Jiang Wanrou knelt on the floor, weeping piteously, claiming she had been momentarily confused and deceived by Liang Zhengxuan. But my father, having been immersed in officialdom for many years, how could he not see through the trickery? He gave Jiang Wanrou a harsh slap and immediately confined her to the ancestral hall, forbidding her from leaving without his decree. As for me, because I had cleared my name in front of everyone and held the status of the victim, my father could not punish me. Instead, he had to offer me gentle words of comfort. But I knew this was far from enough. The Liang family had deep-rooted connections in the capital, and Liang Zhengxuan himself was a man who would seek revenge for even the smallest grievance. Today, I had made him lose face in public and ruined his scheme to marry a daughter of the Jiang family for good luck and to use the Jiang family's influence to restore his clan's prestige. He would never let this go. In this sprawling estate, my father's hypocritical pity would not be enough to protect me for long. I need a blade, peerless, savage blade capable of uprooting the Liang family and ensuring Jiang Wanrou never rises again. And that blade could be none other than Wei Wuyuan, the Duke of Zhen. Late at night, in a secluded meditation room in the rear mountains of Baogua Temple, the candlelight flickered, evading the spies in the manor. I came here alone. The moment I pushed open the door, a cold scent of sandalwood rushed toward me, mingled with a faint trace of blood. Wei Wuyuan sat at the desk, a black short blade in hand, idly trimming the candle wick. He was not clad in armor, wearing instead a black, narrow-sleeved martial robe that accentuated his tall, upright posture. His features were as exquisite as a painting, yet cold as frost. For the second young lady of the Jiang family to keep an appointment alone in the dead of night. You truly have courage. Wei Wuyuan did not look up, his cold voice stirring a faint chill within the empty meditation room. Had there not been a looming catastrophe, I would not have dared to disturb your lordship's quiet cultivation. I closed the door behind me and stepped forward with poise. Coming to a halt 5 paces away from him, Wei Wuyuan finally raised his eyes. His narrow, phoenix-like eyes were filled with scrutiny and amusement. The performance of repaying in kind you put on today at the Lingxiang Pavilion was indeed brilliant. However, I have never been one to meddle in others' affairs. You managed to deliver a message to my personal guard, claiming to have leverage that could determine the fate of the Liang family. Only then did I take the time to see you. If your leverage lacks sufficient weight, I'm afraid you won't be walking out of this meditation room tonight. His voice was extremely soft, yet the killing intent contained within his words seemed to make the very air around us freeze. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening slightly within my sleeves. I knew all too well how ruthless his methods were. In my past life, the number of corrupt officials and traitors who died by his hand was beyond counting. Yet, he was also the sole pillar of integrity in the great Zhou dynasty as long as a matter benefited the court or the common people. He never shirked his duty, The Duke is currently conducting a secret investigation into the Southwest Tribute Silk case. Is that not so? I looked at him, lowering my voice as I cast out the first bait. Wei Wuyuan's hand, which was trimming the candle wick, came to an abrupt halt. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the short blade flashed a blinding silver light across his fingertips, pressing against my throat in an instant. The cold blade sent a shiver down my spine, raising goosebumps all over my skin. Who told you that? Wei Wuyuan's voice was so cold it could drop icicles. Spying on court secrets, this dupe could execute you right now. I was forced to tilt my head back slightly, yet there wasn't a trace of fear in my eyes. Instead, I met his gaze and said, word by word, calm your anger. Your lordship, if you don't want people to know, don't do it. The Liang family may seem prosperous these years, but they are already hollowed out from within, by colluding with officials and merchants in the Southwest to withhold and resell tribute silk. They reap no less than 100,000 taels in illicit profits annually, and the ledger for this money is hidden right inside the hollowed-out tablet in the ancestral hall of the Liang family's old residence. Wei Wuyuan stared at me, the killing intent in his eyes gradually fading, replaced by a look of profound scrutiny. How could a sheltered young lady like you, who never steps foot outside her chambers, know of such secrets? Liang Zhengxuan and my eldest sister have been in secret correspondence for 2 years. My sister has always been meticulous. She once inadvertently caught sight of words like tribute, Southwest, and universe in his letters. Believing these to be the leverage for his meteoric rise, she secretly made a copy and locked it in a hidden compartment of her vanity case. I happened upon it by chance. And by following that lead, I discovered the whereabouts of the ledger. I told the lie without batting an eye. In truth, this case wouldn't break until 2 years later in my previous life. Back then, Wei Wuyuan had exhausted every effort to gather evidence, nearly losing his life at the Liang family's ancestral home. I was merely delivering the secret into his hands ahead of time. Wei Wuyuan withdrew the short blade, twirling it lightly once around his fingertips before it vanished into his sleeve. He leaned back against the chair again, his expression languid, though the wariness in his eyes had dissipated by half. You have brought a case of such magnitude, one capable of exterminating the entire Liang clan, to my attention. What is it you seek? Surely it is not merely for the sake of the great Zhou Empire. Naturally not. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. I am a person of worldly desires, and I seek only self-preservation. Liang Zhengxuan and my elder sister view me as a thorn in their side. Now that I have dropped all pretenses today, they will surely retaliate with madness. I want your lordship to ensure my safety, and when the Liang family falls, I want my elder sister, Jiang Wanrou, pinned firmly among the ranks of the criminals, never to be given a chance to rise again. You certainly harbor a deep-seated hatred for your own elder sister, Wei Wuyuan remarked with a cold, dry irony. She wants my life. I merely want her to live in agony. Is there anything wrong with that? I met his gaze unflinchingly. Wei Wuyuan looked at me and suddenly let out a low chuckle. The sound was muffled yet magnetic, sounding exceptionally clear in the silent night. He stood up and walked over to me. He was extremely tall, and the shadow he cast completely enveloped me. Jiang Wanrou, I originally thought you were a soft persimmon that anyone could squeeze, but I didn't expect you to be a lone wolf in sheep's clothing. He leaned down slightly and whispered in my ear. It's a deal. The day the ledger is in my hands will be the day the Liang family falls. As for your elder sister, I will do as you wish. My thanks to your lordship, I said, curtsying slightly. However, I do not keep idle people around. Before the ledger is obtained, you must do one more thing for me. Wei Wuyuan straightened his posture and looked at me with a raised eyebrow. Please speak. Your Grace, Liang Zhengxuan is currently in desperate need of this marriage with the Jiang family to cover up his deficits and appease those in the southwest. Since you refuse to marry him, he will certainly find a way to ensure Jiang Wanrou takes your place. I want you to add fuel to the fire, so that on their wedding day, they present me with a grand gift. A cruel and playful smile curled at the corners of Wei Wuyuan's lips. My heart stirred, and I immediately understood his meaning. Liang Zhengxuan and Jiang Wanrou thought they had found a way out, unaware that the wedding they were so painstakingly orchestrating would be the very grave they dug with their own hands. I understand. And I will not let your lordship down. When I emerged from Baogua Temple, the night breeze already carried the chill of late autumn. I pulled my cloak tight and looked up at the cold moon. The gloom that had weighed on my heart for days finally began to lift. Jiang Wanrou. The pain you inflicted upon me in our past life and this life, I will make you repay it 100-fold, 1,000-fold. On your very wedding night, on the third day of my confinement in the ancestral hall. I carried a box of exquisite water chestnut cakes and knocked on the locked side door. The hall was thick with swirling smoke and the pungent scent of sandalwood. Clad in plain white robes, Jiang Wanrou knelt on a prayer mat, hearing the movement. She whipped her head around. In just 3 short days, her once rosy cheeks had become sunken, and her eyes were filled with a hatred as sharp as venom. Jiang Wanning, you bitch. How dare you show your face here? She hissed through gritted teeth, lunging forward as if to strike. I stepped aside slightly to avoid her, placing the food box steadily on a nearby side table. My voice remained as calm as still water. Sister, such rage will only harm your health. Father is currently in a fit of temper. If you cause another scene, I fear you won't even be allowed to stay in this ancestral hall. Stop your hypocrisy. Jiang Wanrou glared at me, her fingernails digging deep into the fabric of the prayer mat. The incident at Lingshan Pavilion, you clearly set a trap to ruin me. You usually act so timid and submissive. Yet you hid such a wicked heart. Watching her fuming with rage, I only felt that my past self, the one she had played like a puppet, was utterly pathetic. You are mistaken, elder sister. That sachet was embroidered by your own hands. And the jade pendant was Mr. Liang's personal possession. I merely returned them to their rightful owners. How does that constitute a trap to harm you? I stepped forward, looking down at her from a height. My voice dropped to a low whisper. Besides, the entire capital now knows of your private tryst with Mr. Liang. Father values our family reputation above all else. Last night, I overheard him discussing with Mother in the study. They intend to marry you off to a humble family in Lingnan, never to return to the capital for the rest of your life. What? No. Impossible. Father dotes on me the most. He would never do this to me. Jiang Wanrou panicked completely. She prided herself on being a talented lady. Her eyes fixed solely on positions in the Eastern Palace or the prince's estates. How could she be willing to marry a penniless scholar in the remote south? It is not up to you to believe it or not. I sighed at the opportune moment, my tone carrying a hint of feigned regret. Actually, although Mr. Liang's reputation has been tarnished, the Liang family still holds a hereditary title. I heard that Mr. Liang recently secured a trade route to the southwest and will soon rise to great prosperity. If you marry into the family now, you would be the legitimate wife of the heir, which is far better than being sent to suffer in Lingnan. Jiang Wanru's eyes shifted slightly. She was an utterly selfish and snobbish person, hearing me mention the southwest trade route and consort of the heir apparent. The greed deep within her eyes was instantly piqued. You would be so kind as to plot and scheme for me. She looked at me with suspicion. I simply cannot bear to see my elder sister leave for a far-off land, I said with a self-deprecating smile. Besides, if you marry, Father's anger will subside, and my days in the manor will be a little easier. Having dropped this bait, I did not linger any longer and turned to leave, just as I expected. Jiang Wanrou caused a major scene in the ancestral hall that night. She resorted to a hunger strike as a threat, claiming she already belonged to Liang Zhengxuan and would marry no one else. She declared that if her father insisted on marrying her off to a distant land, she would dash her brains out against the statue of Buddha. The scandal from the Court of Judicial Review's poetry gathering was already impossible to suppress, and the Liang family, plagued by internal financial deficits, was desperate for a marriage alliance with the Jiang family to keep up appearances. The two families reached an immediate agreement, and the original 6-month engagement was abruptly compressed into a mere 2 weeks. A 2-week timeline was so rushed that it didn't feel like preparing for a wedding, but rather like scrambling to cover up a disgrace. On the day of the wedding, fine flakes of snow began to drift down from the sky. Although the entrance to the Liang residence was adorned with lanterns and streamers, the arriving guests were few and far between. Most were low-ranking officials dependent on the Liang family. Of the noble scions who had once called Liang Zhengxuan their brother, not a single one appeared. Dressed in a lilac brocade cloak, I stood quietly among the Jiang family's wedding procession. As I watched Jiang Wanrou step out of the Jiang residence supported by the wedding matron, I felt for a moment as if I were seeing the silhouette of my past self walking toward the abyss. Only this time, the person walking into the abyss was her. The bridal sedan was carried into the Liang residence to the rhythmic sounds of festive pipes and drums. At the time of the wedding ceremony, thick dragon and phoenix candles burned in the hall, bathing the surroundings in a crimson glow. Liang Zhengxuan was dressed in a bright red wedding robe, yet his face was so dark it looked as if it might drip with gloom. He stared coldly at Jiang Wanrou, who stood beside him veiled in red. There was not a trace of joy in his eyes, only the humiliation and resentment of being forced into marriage. First, bow to heaven and earth. The master of ceremonies' high-pitched voice rang out through the wedding hall, just as Liang Zhengxuan and Jiang Wanrou bowed down to perform the ritual. The doors of the hall were suddenly and violently pushed open from the outside. A cold wind, mingled with snowflakes, surged in instantly, causing the wedding candles on the altar to flicker violently. Wait! A clear yet tearful female voice sharply shattered the festive atmosphere within the wedding hall. Everyone turned their heads to see a heavily pregnant woman in tattered clothes, scrambling and crawling inside as she struggled against the grasp of several stout older maidservants. Qianlang, you cannot marry her. If you marry her, how are mother and child supposed to survive? The woman wailed heart-wrenchingly, breaking free from the servants and lunging straight toward Liang Zhengxuan. Throwing her arms around his legs, the wedding hall immediately erupted into an uproar. What is going on? Isn't this Hong Xiao, the courtesan from Jiuxian Pavilion? Good heavens, she's already so far along. To think that young Master Liang, even before getting married. Liang Zhengxuan's face turned deathly pale. He kicked the woman away and roared. Where did this madwoman come from? How dare you run wild at my wedding? Someone, drag her out and beat her to death. Liang Zhengxuan. Jiang Wanrou ripped the red bridal veil off her head. Her face, originally adorned with exquisite makeup, was now contorted with rage. She glared fixedly at the woman on the floor before turning her gaze toward Liang Zhengxuan. Before the wedding, you swore to the heavens that your life was clean. This woman even has a child. Do you take me for a corpse? My lady, stop acting so pure and lofty in front of me. Liang Zhengxuan, already seething with suppressed anger, finally tore off his mask of civility and sneered. You think you're some paragon of virtue. If you were truly clean, how could you have lost your virginity to me at the manor before the wedding? You're nothing but damaged goods. What right do you have to look down on me? As soon as these words were spoken, the wedding hall erupted into a chaotic uproar. Good heavens, the eldest daughter of the Jiang family actually. Before the wedding. No wonder this marriage was arranged in such a hurry. It turns out she was already pregnant and it's a shotgun wedding. The guests' whispers surged like a tide, every word landing like a stinging slap across the faces of Jiang Wanrou and Liang Zhengxuan. Hong Xiao, still on the ground, wept even more bitterly, wiping away her tears. She pulled a stack of letters from her bosom and held them high. Distinguished guests, please see the truth for yourselves. I am not here to cause a scene without reason. These are the letters of guarantee young Master Liang wrote to me, stamped with the private seal of the Liang manor. He said that as soon as he married the Jiang family's fortune into his house to cover the deficits in the southwest, he would immediately take me in as a concubine and give our child a legitimate name. The words deficits in the southwest hit like a massive boulder crashing into still water. Standing behind the crowd, the corners of my mouth curled up slightly. This woman was indeed Liang Zhengxuan's mistress, and those letters of guarantee were also taken from Liang Zhengxuan's study by people I had helped her with. As for the deficit in the southwest, as long as it is brought to light today, Wei Wuyuan will have the most legitimate reason to launch an attack against the Liang family in the imperial court. You're lying, you lowly wench. I'll kill you. Completely driven to madness, Liang Zhengxuan drew a decorative sword from the side of the wedding hall and lunged toward Hong Xiao. Stop! A majestic and stern shout came from outside the door. A squad of Northern Pacification Office lieutenants, clad in flying fish robes and wielding embroidered spring blades, had surrounded the Liang manor at some unknown moment. Wei Wuyuan, dressed in a black gold-woven robe, stepped through the wind and snow, walking inside with an expressionless face. Inside the wedding hall, the cold wind howled as swirling snow drifted in. Wei Wuyuan's sharp shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing the faces of the gathered guests to pale in shock. The black-clad lieutenants of the Northern Pacification Office filed in, their waist-slung embroidered spring blades reflecting a bone-chilling light under the candlelight, instantly sealing off the main hall of the Liang manor so tightly that not even a drop of water could leak through. The long sword in Liang Zhengxuan's hand wavered, nearly slipping from his grasp. Forcing himself to remain calm, he looked at Wei Wuyuan, who was walking in slowly, and gritted his teeth. Lord Duke, today is my wedding day. Even if your power overshadows the court, leading the men of the Northern Pacification Department to force your way into a noble's residence is surely against all reason and protocol. Is it not? Against reason. Wei Wuyuan sat down elegantly in the Grand Master's chair at the head of the hall. He tapped his fingertips lightly on the tabletop and let out a cold sneer. Liang Zhengxuan, you have operated private iron mines and lined your own pockets. And now you have added the embezzlement of the Southwest tribute taxes to your list of crimes. I am here under the Emperor's secret decree to apprehend a major criminal. What reason do you think you have to discuss with me? Hong Xiao, the high-ranking courtesan who had been clinging to Liang Zhengxuan's leg, was now being helped up by a lieutenant while weeping. The stack of private letters in her hand, marked with blood-stained fingerprints, was immediately presented to Wei Wuyuan. I stood at the back of the crowd, watching the scene unfold with cold indifference. The dead-end road leading the Liang family to hell was, at this very moment, finally and completely sealed. Lord Duke, this is a frame-up. Someone must be envious of my Liang family and is intentionally planting evidence to implicate us. The old Marquis Liang Zhengxuan's father, rushed out from the back hall, his face deathly pale as he collapsed to his knees. That Hong Xiao is nothing more than a courtesan from a brothel. How can her words be taken as testimony in court? I implore the Lord Duke to investigate thoroughly. Wei Wuyuan didn't even spare him a glance. He simply let the letters flutter through his fingertips, his voice cold and thin. Whether it is a frame-up or not will be known once they are taken back to the Northern Pacification Department for interrogation. Men, take Liang Zhengxuan, Hong Xiao, and all the accounting managers of the Liang manor into custody. Wait. A sharp, piercing voice, thick with the sound of sobbing, rang out. Jiang Wanrou, having torn off her bridal veil, rushed into the front hall in total defiance of etiquette. She stared fixedly at Liang Zhengxuan before turning her gaze toward Wei Wuyuan, her eyes bloodshot. Lord Duke, today is my wedding to young Master Liang. If the Liang family is guilty, they should naturally be punished. But my Jiang family is innocent and untainted. I am the eldest legitimate daughter of the Jiang family. Since the marriage was not completed today, may I return to the Jiang family home first? She was calculating with extreme precision. Now that the Liang family's power had collapsed, she would be utterly ruined for life if she were detained. As long as she could escape back to the Jiang family, she might still be able to save her life by relying on her father's status. I looked at her face, which was etched with selfishness and greed, feeling nothing but a surge of irony in my heart. In her past life, it was in this very wedding hall that she watched coldly as Liang Zhengxuan tormented me, even advising me from the sidelines to keep the big picture in mind. Now, the tables have turned, and she is finally tasting the bitterness of being abandoned and driven into a corner. Return to the Jiang family. Before Wei Wuyuan could speak, I slowly stepped out from the crowd. I looked at Jiang Wanrou, my voice tinged with a mix of heartache and helplessness. Elder sister, what nonsense are you talking about? You and young Master Liang have already exchanged birth charts, and the marriage contract was filed with the officials last month. Although the ceremony was not completed today, you are already the legitimate consort of the Liang family's heir. Now that the Liang family has fallen into misfortune, as a daughter-in-law of the Liang house, How can you think only of your own escape and abandon your husband's family? Jiang Wanrou, shut your mouth. Jiang Wanrou roared at me like a madwoman. It's all because of you. You're the slut who ruined me. Elder sister. I am only acting for the sake of the Jiang family's reputation. I took a step back and curtsied slightly toward Wei Wuyuan, my voice clear and resonant. Lord Duke. Although my eldest sister has married into the Liang family, my father, Censor Jiang, has lived a life of integrity and knew nothing of the Liang family's embezzlement of the tribute tax. I implore your lordship to investigate thoroughly and not allow the Liang family's crimes to tarnish the reputation of the entire Jiang clan. These words of mine appeared to be exonerating the Jiang family, but in reality, they publicly severed all ties between Jiang Wanrou and the Jiangs. Since she was so desperate to marry into the Liang family, she would have to endure the full weight of their monstrous crimes. With no hope of escape, Wei Wuyuan lifted his gaze, a flicker of imperceptible approval flashing in his deep eyes. He raised his hand slightly, cutting through the clamor in the wedding hall. Second Miss Jiang shows great righteousness. Naturally, I will neither wrong an innocent person nor let a culprit go free. Since Madame Liang is already betrothed to Liang Zhengxuan, she shall remain behind closed doors in the Liang manor to reflect on her actions and cooperate with the investigation. Without my personal order, no one is permitted to enter or leave the Liang manor. No. Jiang Wanrou let out a scream of despair, her legs giving way as she collapsed onto the ground soaked with slush. That expensive aqua blue wedding gown was instantly stained and ruined by the muddy water. Meanwhile, Liang Zhengxuan was dragged out of the wedding hall by two black-armored captains like a dead dog. 3 days later, the night was as cool as water. The Liang family was under siege, and the entire capital's political landscape was in turmoil. The old Marquis Liang scurried about the imperial court, attempting to use his past connections to save Liang Zhengxuan. Meanwhile, within the Liang manor, Jiang Wanrou sold off every piece of her dowry that could be liquidated in an effort to grease the necessary palms. They believed that as long as they provided enough silver, the Liang family could stage a comeback. What they did not know, however, was that their entire financial lifeline had long since fallen under my control. My lady, this is the news from the Court of Judicial Review. The maid handed me a secret letter, sitting under the flickering candlelight. I looked at the dense list of trading firms on the paper and let out a cold sneer. The reason the Liang family was able to cover the sky with one hand in the southwest was entirely due to a bank called Zhifenglang. On the surface, this bank was opened by merchants from Jiangnan. But in reality, it was the Liang family's secret headquarters for laundering dirty silver and mobilizing funds. In my past life, it was precisely because of the steady stream of silver sent by Zhifenglang that Liang Zhengxuan was able to rise step by step in the imperial court, eventually trampling my Jiang family under his feet. And now, it is time for this bank to change hands. Go tell Lord Wei that he may proceed. I held the letter over the candle flame, watching it turn to ash in an instant. Half an hour later, in the secret chamber of the Duke of Jin's estate, Wei Wuyuan, dressed in casual attire, was studying a map of the Jiangnan region spread across the table. Seeing me enter, he raised an eyebrow slightly and pushed a cup of warm pu'er tea toward me. Second Miss Jiang, your removing the firewood from under the cauldron maneuver was executed brilliantly. Wei Wuyuan's voice was low, tinged with a hint of amusement. The manager of Zhifenglang has already been secretly detained by my men. When old Marquis Liang sent someone to withdraw that 100,000 taels of life-saving silver today, they came up empty-handed. As of now, the Liang family has not only lost their money, but several of their external trade routes have also been thoroughly seized by my office. The Duke overpraises me. I picked up my teacup and took a light sip. It was slightly bitter upon entry, yet the aftertaste was exceptionally sweet. Without their silver, those so-called old friends in the imperial court will naturally avoid the Liang family as if they were the plague. A Liang family with no remaining utility is, in the emperor's eyes, nothing more than a pile of refuse that can be discarded at any moment. Your grasp of human nature truly makes me see you in a new light. Wei Wuyuan rested his chin on his hand, his beautiful phoenix eyes fixed intently on me as if trying to see right through me. However, your eldest sister is currently trapped in the Liang manor, and Liang Zhengxuan is in prison. What do you think their next move will be? I set down my teacup, my lips curling into a cruel arc. When a ship is about to sink, the rats on board will always slaughter one another for the very last plank of wood. Liang Zhengxuan was tyrannical by nature, and Jiang Wanrou was selfish and venomous. These two were now trapped in a cage on the brink of collapse, stripped of their power and wealth. Nothing remained but endless accusations and resentment. I could almost foresee what a magnificent spectacle of dog-eat-dog awaited them. Then I shall wait and see, Wei Wuyuan chuckled, his eyes shimmering with a cold, excited light. The wind and snow howled outside the window. But inside this warm, secret chamber, I felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction for the first time. Liang Zhengxuan, Jiang Wanrou, your paths of retreat have been severed by me, inch by inch, until nothing remains. The heavy snow fell for 3 consecutive days, shrouding the entire capital in a thick, oppressive layer of deathly white. The Liang residence, once bustling with visitors, was now sealed shut by the strips of the Northern Pacification Magistracy. The once arrogant heir, who used to ride through the streets in fine clothes and on spirited horses, had become a prisoner despised by all. Meanwhile, my eldest sister, who prided herself on her lofty purity while desperately climbing the social ladder, was trapped within these 4 high walls. Her food supplies cut off, enduring the harsh elements. Wei Wuyuan and I stood side by side behind the screen wall in the side hall of the Liang residence. Wind and snow poured in through the shattered window lattices, making my fox fur cloak rustle softly. Today, I have sent them a grand gift, Wei Wuyuan said, standing with his hands behind his back, a cold smile playing on his lips. The Court of Judicial Review has leaked word that for the Liang family's crimes of conspiring with the enemy and embezzling tax silver, only the ringleaders will be executed. If one can report and expose accomplices, they may be spared from death and instead be exiled to the frontier. Hearing this, the corners of my mouth curled slightly. For those who are selfish to the core, this life-saving straw is enough to make them tear at each other's throats. In the side hall, the iron lock hit the floor with a dull, crisp clang. Immediately following was the sound of messy, heavy footsteps. Liang Zhengxuan was shoved inside by 2 lieutenants. He wore a set of filthy, tattered prisoner's robes. His once handsome face was now completely distorted by hunger and fear, his cheekbones protruding sharply and his eyes bloodshot. On the other side, Jiang Wanrou was led out from the inner courtyard. The bright red wedding dress she wore was already in tatters, stained with dark red blood and grime. Her black hair, which she had once painstakingly maintained, was now disheveled and matted, making her look like a madwoman. The moment the two saw each other clearly, a surge of monstrous hatred erupted in their eyes almost simultaneously. Jiang Wanrou, you jinx! Liang Zhengxuan lunged forward violently. Had the lieutenants behind him not held him down firmly, he would have torn her apart with his teeth. If it weren't for the sake of marrying you into my family, why would I have been so desperate to pull strings in court and touch that tax silver? You slut! It was you who ruined the entire Liang family. I ruined you! Jiang Wanrou shrieked, her voice hoarse and piercing, stripped of any trace of her former gentleness as a talented lady. Liang Zhengxuan, stop your baseless accusations. Your Liang family was nothing but a gilded camaraderie to the core long ago. You despise me for being damaged goods. But don't you forget, it was you who used drugs to force yourself on me at the villa. You despicable, shameless coward. You aren't even fit to be compared to a single strand of Wei Wuyuan's hair. Slap. Liang Zhengxuan managed to free one hand and delivered a vicious slap across Jiang Wanrou's face. Jiang Wanrou's head snapped to the side from the force of the slap. She spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm, but then suddenly erupted into a chilling cackle that sounded exceptionally eerie in the empty side hall. Liang Zhengxuan, if you want me dead, don't think for a second you'll survive either. Jiang Wanrou pulled a stack of letters still warm from being hidden against her body from her robes and shrieked at the lieutenants on either side. My lords, I have evidence. I want to atone for my crimes by performing a service. These are letters written in Liang Zhengxuan's own hand, proving his collusion with the Southwest rebels to illegally operate iron mines and secretly transport weapons. The private seal on them was stamped by his own hand. Liang Zhengxuan's eyes widened in shock as he stared at the stack of letters in disbelief. You bitch. You actually stole my secret correspondence. That's not all. Jiang Wanrou glared at him, her face filled with a sense of frenzied satisfaction. He also forced me to use my father's censorate seal to help him cover up the tax fraud cases in Jiangnan. My lords, this lowly woman was coerced. He is the masterminded is Liang Zhengxuan. Jiang Wanrou, leaning into a fit of rage. Liang Zhengxuan violently broke free from his restraints and lunged at her, his hands clamping tightly around her neck. Jiang Wanrou's face turned purple from suffocation. Yet her hands clawed frantically at Liang Zhengxuan's face, her fingernails instantly filling with blood and shredded flesh. The two of them rolled and tore at each other on the cold, hard blue stone floor, like two rabid dogs fighting over a piece of carrion. Watching this scene unfold, I slowly stepped out from behind the screen wall, hearing the sound of footsteps. The two people scuffling together froze and turned their heads in unison. The moment she saw me clearly, Jiang Wanrou's movements stiffened completely. Second sister, Wanning. Jiang Wanrou looked as if she had seen a savior, crawling desperately toward me and clutching at my hem. Wanning, help your sister. Please plead with the Duke for me. I am your own sister. It was all Liang Zhengxuan who forced me. I am innocent. I looked down at her from a height, my eyes calm without a single ripple of emotion. Eldest sister, when you used the begonia sachet to frame me, plotting for me to marry into the Liang family as your scapegoat, did you ever once consider that I am your own flesh and blood? My voice was soft, yet every word was like a blade, stabbing straight into her heart. Jiang Wanrou trembled violently, her mouth hanging open, but she couldn't utter a single word. Beside her, Liang Zhengxuan finally realized what was happening. He stared at me intently, a look of horrified realization finally surfacing in the depths of his eyes. It was you. It was you. You bitch. Liang Zhengxuan spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm and laughed miserably. From the moment at the cold fragrance pavilion, it was all your setup. You intentionally exposed the jade pendant. You deliberately provoked me. And even Hong Xiao. You were the one who brought Hong Xiao here, weren't you? Jiang Wanning, you insidious, venomous woman, you played the fool so well, but it turns out you are the most poisonous of them all. You must be joking. Young Master Liang. I offered a faint smile, stepping back with effortless grace to avoid the sour stench emanating from him. Had you not been harborers of ill intent and insatiable greed, how could my scheme have unfolded so smoothly? One reaps what one sows. Surely you understand this better than I. Jiang Wanning. I will haunt you even as a ghost. Liang Zhengxuan shrieked hysterically, his voice rasping with utter despair. As a ghost. Wei Wuyuan stepped slowly from behind me, his black cloak snapping in the wind and snow. He looked down at Liang Zhengxuan, who lay slumped in the muddy slush, his gaze as cold as if he were looking at a pile of dead matter. Liang Zhengxuan, you have conspired with the enemy and committed treason. Your crimes are beyond pardon. As for your retinue, they have already confessed everything in the dungeons of the Northern Pacification Department. Do you truly believe you will even be granted the chance to become a ghost? Wei Wuyuan raised his hand slightly. Several lieutenants immediately stepped forward, dragging away the howling and cursing Liang Zhengxuan like a dead dog, along with Jiang Wanrou, whose face was as ashen as death and whose body had gone completely limp. Their desperate cries echoed through the long corridor, gradually fading into the cold wind until they were utterly swallowed by the howling blizzard. A deathly silence returned to the side hall. I stared at the pool of dark red blood on the floor and let out a long, heavy sigh. The haze that had weighed on my heart for so many days finally dissipated completely at this moment. Vengeance is yours. Is the second young lady of the Jiang family pleased? Wei Wuyuan turned his head to look at me, his deep eyes shimmering with fragments of light. Meeting his gaze, I curtsied slightly. My thanks to your lordship for making this possible. Without your lordship's decisive actions, I fear I would have long since become nothing more than another wandering soul within these manor walls. I have said before that I never keep idle people around. Since you have helped me obtain the Liang family's ledgers, I will naturally fulfill my promise. Wei Wuyuan took a half-step forward, closing the distance between us. His breath, carrying a faint scent of rosin, brushed against my forehead. However, the Liang family has fallen. and the Jiang family's reputation is now in tatters because of Jiang Wanrou. Second Miss Jiang, how do you intend to carry yourself from now on? I looked up, gazing at the man before me who held absolute power over the imperial court. A strong wind swept past, tangling his cloak with my fox fur coat starkly black and white, yet perfectly entwined. The Duke must be joking. The world is vast. Since I was able to crawl out of this quagmire, I will naturally find my own path to the top. I spoke each word with unwavering certainty. Wei Wuyuan looked at me and suddenly let out a low laugh. In that laughter was an unprecedented sense of admiration and a predatory resolve. What a magnificent path to the heavens. Since that is the case, what harm is there in this Duke accompanying you on this journey? The spring breeze brushed against our faces, and the ice and snow began to melt. The Liang family's case of treason and collaboration with the enemy was finally settled on the day of the awakening of insects. The Liang father and son were sentenced to immediate execution, and all their family property was confiscated. On the day of the execution, the Kaishiku execution grounds in the capital were swarmed with onlookers. Liang Zhengxuan knelt on the scaffold in filthy prison robes, his hair disheveled and matted. Even at that final moment, he stared intently into the crowd, desperately searching for my figure. But I did not go. The struggles of a dead man are not worth a single glance of mine. According to the maid who went to watch, Liang Zhengxuan screamed my name frantically before the execution, calling me a demoness and claiming that I had orchestrated everything. But in the eyes of the onlookers, he was nothing more than a crazed death row prisoner. His cries were soon completely drowned out by the curses and rotten eggs of the commoners. The blade fell, and just like that, the head of the once insufferable heir of the Liang family rolled onto the ground. Jiang Wanrou's fate was equally miserable. Although she was spared the death penalty, she was stripped of her noble status, demoted to a commoner, and exiled to the bitter cold of the far north to serve the military. On the day of her departure, those hands that once played the zither and painted hands that had never touched a drop of dishwater were worn bloody and raw by heavy iron chains. Before she left, I made an exception and went to the 10-mile pavilion outside the city to see her off. Jiang Wanrou wore a heavy wooden cane, her eyes dry and lifeless. When she saw me standing before her, dressed in fine silks and looking refreshed, the dead ashes in the depths of her eyes finally erupted with one last spark of madness. Jiang Wanning, you won. Are you satisfied now? Her voice was as hoarse as a broken bellows. You've ruined me to this point. Father will not let you get away with this. And the Jiang family will not let you get away with this. I stepped forward unhurriedly, smoothing the collar of her tattered prison garb. Lowering my voice, I said, "Eldest sister, father has already recorded my name under mother's lineage. I am now the sole legitimate daughter of the Jiang household. As for you, a criminal woman exiled to the frontier, the Jiang family has long since struck your name from the genealogy. Tell me, would father trouble meth future lady of the State Duke for the sake of a dead person?" Lady of the State Duke, you are marrying Wei Wuyuan. Jiang Wanrou looked as if she had been struck by lightning, her entire body freezing in place. Indeed, I smiled faintly, leaning in to whisper in her ear, you always used to think I wasn't as clever as you, calling me a pretty fool, but now, looking at where I stand, can you even compare? Jiang Wanrou began to tremble violently. She looked at me, her eyes finally reflecting a state of absolute terror. She finally understood that in this life, she hadn't just lost, she had lost so utterly and completely that there was no room left for a comeback. The bailiff's whip lashed mercilessly across her back, urging her forward. She limped through the swirling dust and sand, her piercing cries gradually fading into the vast, golden haze. Word has it that before she even reached the far north, she succumbed to a bout of wind chill halfway there, ending her young yet sordid life with a frayed straw rope. Half a month later, the news of a great victory and an imperial decree spread throughout the capital simultaneously. Wei Wuyuan, the Duke of Zhen, had successfully pacified the southwest. As a reward for his service, the emperor specially bestowed a marriage between him and Jiang Wanning, the legitimate daughter of the Jiang household. On the wedding day, the entire capital was adorned in 10 miles of red makeup, accompanied by the thunderous sound of gongs and drums. My father, his face beaming with smiles, personally assisted me into the 8-bearer grand sedan chair. That face, which had once been frost-cold and driven solely by profit, was now etched with nothing but fawning sycophancy. I sat in the bridal sedan, listening to the thunderous wedding music outside. In my past life, there was only a shabby little sedan that carried me into the Liang manor through the side door. At that time, my heart was full of joy, thinking I had married a good man, unaware that what awaited me was an endless abyss of torment. But in this life, I am dressed in a formal crimson gown embroidered with gold lilies, wearing a solid gold phoenix crown with 9 outspread wings. With every step I take, the eastern pearl tassels on the crown clink softly, emitting a crisp and pleasant sound. I am marrying the most powerful man in the great Zhou dynasty with the utmost dignity and honor. The curtain of the sedan was lifted. A slender, powerful hand, marked with light calluses, was extended before me. I lifted my head slightly, catching a glimpse of the spirited Wei Wuyuan through the hazy red bridal veil. He was dressed in vibrant red wedding robes, having shed his usual coldness and majesty. His phoenix eyes were now filled with nothing but tenderness and persistence. "Wanning, I have come to take you home," he said, his voice deep and resolute. I pressed my lips together and smiled, placing my hand firmly into his palm. His hand was immense and incredibly warm, completely enveloping my ice-cold fingertips. Amidst the cheers of the city's people, I stepped over the brazier side by side with him, walking step by step toward the main hall of the Duke's mansion. A symbol of supreme power, the wind brushed against my red bridal veil, revealing the slight upward curve of my lips. Looking back at the past, Liang Zhengxuan's cold and contemptuous words, "You are nothing but a pretty fool, not even fit to be compared to a single finger of your sister," still echoed in my ears. But he could never have dreamed that the fool in his eyes has now dyed her wedding dress red with the blood of his entire clan, and paved her own grand path to the pinnacle of power with his accumulated bones. In this life, I, Jiang Wanrou, have finally ascended to the most noble and inviolable position in this world with my unyielding spirit. From this moment forth, the world lies wide before me, and the mountains and rivers shall be governed as one. The end. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.